everyone. Have a blessed day to all of us. Now we are down to Module 5, which is evaluating the curriculum. But before we will start, may we ask for your cooperation as we discuss the steps in evaluating the curriculum as well as the models in curriculum development. First, we will define evaluation as one of the fundamental elements in curriculum development. According to Benjamin Bloom, evaluation is designed or it is the process of collecting data as an evidence to check if there is a progress or there is a change in learners' performance. Another definition is evaluation as the process of making decisions or conclusions and determining the value or worth of something with the given criterion to check if the goals were achieved. Another information, evaluation are both quantitative or numerical and qualitative or verbal, specifically the data collection, data analysis, and interpretation.
According to Grunlund in 1968, there are four basic steps in evaluating the curriculum. First one is identification of the instructional objectives or the exact learning results desired. A clear instructional objectives will help in the progress of evaluation. That's why it is important to identify the instructional objectives, for it indicates the desirable knowledge, skills, or attitudes to be gained. Second, if necessary, operational statement of these objectives, that is specification of the process and content elements in case instructional objectives are not precisely stated. Third, selection of instruments for measuring or description of learning results expected. Selecting proper or reliable instruments in measuring or description of learning results expected, such as aligning it to the programs or objectives, is important because it relates directly to the utility of the information gained from the assessment. Lastly, administration of the instruments and analysis of outcomes to determine the extent of which the expected learning results have been attained. Administering the instruments and analysis of outcomes yields a quality result, good response rates, and avoid biases. Now, let's proceed to the steps in the evaluation process. There are six. First, defining the purpose and scope of the evaluation. What do you think is the reason why it is needed to define first the evaluation's purpose and scope? It is needed to define the purpose and scope of the evaluation for the evaluator to see and manage the size or limit of the evaluation. It includes the goals and objectives of evaluation as well as the result coming from the audience. However, goals and objectives may vary depending on the instructional program or the curriculum being needed to be evaluated, or the longevity and quality of the curriculum, like if it is needed to be tested and documented before disseminating and adapting the said result. Evaluation purpose depends on the audience, either it is restricted only for individual teacher, school staff member, or it includes a wider range of individuals, like from school to planner and decision makers at the local, state, or national level. While evaluation scope depends at the evaluation's purpose and the information needed for a specific audience. Defining the purpose and scope of the evaluation needs costs and resource in order to carry out or conduct the said evaluation. Then, specifying the evaluation questions. In an evaluation, questions are very important, for it furthers the evaluation and it helps to attain the progress of the purpose and scope being specified. Questions helps in addressing the needs of the specific audience. After the formulation and development of questions, it is needed to carefully examine or test the instructional objectives in relation to the time and resources. This is to avoid the occurrence of inaccurate informations. After that, final questions were selected. Third, developing the evaluation design and data collection plan. In relation to those questions, now it is the time to design and plan how are you going to execute those questions in order to collect the needed data. In designing, it is the development of those instruments needed in collecting and recording the data. It is needed also to consider what will be the relevance of the items to the evaluation questions, as well as the ease or difficulty of obtaining the data. That's why instruments must be reviewed to know how is the cost and its effectiveness without causing inconvenience or stress to the students. In planning of data collection, there were 5 steps involved. First, specifying the data sources for each evaluation question. Second, specifying the types of data, data collection approaches, and instruments. Third, specifying the specific time period for collecting data. Fourth, specifying how data will be collected and by whom. And lastly, specifying the resources required in carrying out the evaluation. Data collection instruments may include record, keep forms, questionnaires, interview guides, tests, or other assessments. Fourth step in evaluation process is collecting data. After the formulation, examination, and selection of questions, as well as in designing and planning data collection, now it is the time to collect or gather those data needed from the desired participants. However, you are not just going to throw those questionnaires, forms, or interview to the participants, but there is a standard process that must be followed so that data will be valid and reliable. It includes recording data carefully to have an easy tabulation and summarizing when it comes to analysis stage. Next, proper record keeping to avoid lost or misplaced data as well as documenting those deviations in the collection of data. Fifth step, analyzing the data and preparing a report. After collecting all the data needed, now it is the time to analyze by tabulating, summarizing, and interpreting the collected data by using appropriate descriptive measures. After that, prepare for the report. Be guided with these 2 questions. First, what does the audience need to know about the evaluation results? And second, how these results be presented. Different audience need different levels of information. Thus, the report must cover the goals of evaluation, procedures and methods used, the findings and the implication of the findings, including recommendations or improvements in the program. Finally, the last step in evaluation process is using the evaluation report for program improvement. After reporting, the evaluation is not considered as successful, for the results must be used for the improvement of instruction and for the students' success. This is to check or to see if the objectives are met and the instructions were implemented according to the plan.
So let us now proceed to Bradley's effectiveness model. Bradley's effectiveness model. Leo H. Bradley is the proponent of this model and made public when his book, Curriculum Leadership and Development Handbook, was published. Bradley's chart is composed of 10 indicators that can be measured the effectiveness of the developed curriculum. The indicators respond with a yes or no. Here are the 10 indicators. Number 1, vertical continuity. The description on the chart reflects on K-12 format because K-12 are in spiral scheme. Subjects are taught from simple to complex. In this way, subjects are taught with connections and relation to avoid void in repetition of complexity and learning content. Learning void is that when the subject taught does not correlate with the previous subject. Number 2 is horizontal continuity, curriculum continuity. Provide content and objectives that are common to all classrooms of the same grade level. Number 3 is instruction-based curriculum. This means learning materials, course of study, lesson plans, curriculum resource guides are all correlated. Number 4, curriculum priority. Teachers should not be asked to do clerical works because teachers have more important to do about the curriculum. Teachers should also receive right amount of wage. Number 5 is broad involvement. Buildings in the district must have representative on the curricular committees. Building in the broad involvement means department, meaning each department should have a representative like teachers, principals, and others. Number 6 is long-range planning. According to Bradley, one mark on effective curriculum is the focus on the made, decision made, not to those who made the decision. This is to avoid the corrupting of the decision made. Broad involvement. This is what Mom is saying during her past discussion. That the idea should be from broad involvement of teachers, principals, and others, not just the curriculum leader itself. In short, the idea should not just come from the leader itself. Number 9 is long-range planning, then decision-making, positive human relations. Number 12 is theory into practice approach. Number 13 is plan change. The plan change accepts the studies to develop a course of study for each program. And as Bradley says, if any of the 10 indicators get a no, it should be looked after to make it a yes.
So we go to the next slide, which is the Ralph-Tyler's model, the 4 basic elements, and these 4 basic elements is also known as the Tyler's rational curriculum development model, emphasizes the planning phase. This is presented in his book Basic Principle of Curriculum and Instruction. He posited our fundamental principles, which are illustrated as answers to the following questions. So the first is, what education purposes should schools seek to attain? So second, what educational experiences can be provided that are likely to attain these purposes? The third, how can these educational experiences be effectively organized? Fourth, how can we determine whether these purposes are being attained or not? Tyler's model shows that in curriculum development, following considerations should be made also. So the first is the purposes. Second, the educational experiences related to the purposes. Third, organization, and the fourth is the evaluation of the experiences. So that is the Ralph Tyler's models in objectives in child-centered learning.
Context, Input, Process, and Product Model, or CIPP model, by Daniel L. Staffelbeam, year 1971. This widely cited model of evaluation, according to Staffelbeam and Shinkfield, year 2007, a comprehensive framework for conducting formation and summative evaluations of projects, personnel, products, organization, and evaluation systems. Education aims to determine if a particular educational effort has resulted in a positive change in school. An act of making up one's mind about the programs introduced. And there are the 4 components. It plays important and necessary roles in the planning, implementation, and assessment of a project. The purpose of an input evaluation is to help prescribe a program by which to make.
Moving on, let's now proceed to the 4 components of CP model by Staffelbeam. Component 1. what needs to be done, and in what context. Component 1, according to Staffelbeam, is to assess the overall environmental readiness of the project. Examine whether existing goals and priorities are attuned to needs, and assess whether proposed objectives are sufficiently responsive to assessed needs. This component addresses the goal identification stage of a service learning project. Therefore, application of the context evaluation component of the CP evaluation module could potentially prevent this pitfall.
Second component is how should it be done? Input evaluation helps prescribe a project to address the identified needs. It identifies procedural designs and educational strategies that will most likely achieve the desired result. Methods used to execute an input evaluation include inventorying and analyzing available human and material resources, proposed budgets and schedules, recommended solution strategies and procedural designs. The third component is it being done? Monitoring, documenting, and providing feedback to determine whether the planned actions are being carried out correctly or if any adjustments or amendments are required. Not just to monitor the project but also to ensure that the participants are performing their duties correctly using the process evaluation techniques such as on-site observation, participant interviews, reading skills questionnaires, self-reflection with staff members, and tracking of expenditures. The fourth component that the program succeed. The product evaluation identifies and assesses program outcomes. The purpose is to measure, interpret, and judge a program's outcomes by assessing their merit, worth, significance, and probity. Its main purpose is to ascertain the extent to which the needs of all the participants were met. It helps cross-check the various findings. The important purposes of the fourth component. It provides summative information that can be used to judge the merits and impacts of the service learning project. It also provides formative information that can be used to make adjustment and improvement to the project for future implementation.
Goal-free evaluation model. Michael Scriven was the first who developed the goal-free evaluation model in 1972. He was the first to question the assumptions that goals or objectives are crucial in the evaluation process. Michael Scriven also involved in several evaluation projects, and after that he discovered that side effects are more significant than the original objectives. He also began to question seemingly arbitrary distinctions between the intended and unintended effects. His goal-free model was the outcome of his dissatisfaction. In conducting a free goal evaluation, the evaluator functions as an unbiased observer who begins by generating a profile of needs for the group served by the program. Scriven vagues somewhat as to how this needs profile is to be delivered. By using methods that are primarily qualitative in nature, the evaluator assesses the actual effects of the program. If the program has an effect that is responsive to one of the identified needs, then the program is perceived as useful. The main contribution of Michael Scriven was to redirect the attention of the evaluators and the administrators to the unintended effects. It is the redirection that seems especially useful in education. For example, is that if a mathematics program achieves its objectives of improving computational skills but has the unintended effects of diminishing interest in mathematics, then it cannot be judged completely successful. Scriven goal-free evaluation should be used to complement, not supplement, or goal-biased assessment. Some critics have faulted Scriven for not providing more explicit directions for developing and implementing goal-free model. As a consequence, it probably can be used only by experts who do not require explicit guidance in assessing needs and detecting effects. In goal-free model evaluation, there are four methodologies. Number one is determining what effects the curriculum had and evaluate them whether not or whether they are intended or not. Number two, evaluate the actual effects against a profile of demonstrated needs. Number three, notice something that everyone else overlook or produce a novel overall perspective. And last methodology is do not be under the control of the management. You have to choose the variables of the evaluation independently. There are criteria also for judging the evaluation studies. Number one is the validity. Validity is the extent to which a test measures what it claims to measure. It is vital for an evaluation to be valid in order for the results to be accurately applied and interpreted. Number two is the reliability. This refers to the extent to which an assessment methods or instrument measures consistently the performance of the students. Number three is the objectivity or the credibility. This means that you are going to ask if there is a bias given to the information provided or what is the point of view does you represent. The credibility involves both the honesty of the person and how an authority they are. Number four is the importance or the timeliness. This implies that evaluate information should be available at the time when decisions are made or not. This will help you to identify the best possible methods and strategies for getting the needed information. It also helps you to overcome and it also help you to come up with the reasonable and realistic timeliness for evaluation. Most importantly, it will help you to improve your initiatives. Number five is the relevance. Relevance involves looking at the differences and trade-off between the priorities or needs. It requires analyzing any changes in the context to assess the extent to which the intervention can be adapted to remain relevant. Number six is the scope. The scope will help you to better understand your target audience's needs and how to meet these needs, design or objectives that are achievable more effectively and efficiency. And last criteria is the efficiency. This is the considered it is considered with the process by which the plan is delivered to produce the outputs.
Next topic is about stakes responsive model. Now let's see first the origin of the responsive model. This model was created by Robert E. Stake. He is a professor emeritus of education of the University Illinois Urbana-Champaign. He created theory and practical uses for educational program evaluations. He created this model because he was unsatisfied with other models due to their over-reliance of the adjudication of responsibility of success or failure in the program being evaluated. Next is the characteristics. This model is less reliant on formal communication, more reliant on natural communication. The model needs interactive communication between the evaluators and the participants. It pays attention to what is happening in the program. They rely little on formal statements and abstract representations, though responsive evaluations require planning and structure. This model stresses the issues, context, and language of the participants. It is based on what people do naturally to evaluate things like observing and reacting. In program evaluation, there are certain events that need to occur, and in responsive evaluation, there are 9 enumerated steps. The first step is the evaluator meets with clients, staff, and audiences to gain a sense of their perspectives on and intentions regarding the evaluation. Step 2. The evaluator draws on such discussions and the analysis of any documents to determine the scope of the evaluation project. Step 3. The evaluator observes the program closely to get a sense of its operation and to note any unintended deviations from announced intents. Step 4. The evaluator discovers the stated and real purposes of the project and the concerns that various audiences have about it and the evaluation. Step 5. The evaluator identifies the issues and problems with which the evaluation should be concerned. Step 6. The evaluator selects the means needed to acquire the data desired. Most often, the means will be human observers or judges. Step 7. This is the time to observe designated antecedents, transactions, and outcomes. The evaluator organizes the information into themes and prepares portrayals that communicate in natural ways the thematic reports. The portrayals may involve videotapes, artifacts, case studies, or other representations. Step 9. By being sensitive to the concerns of the stakeholders, the evaluator decides which audiences require which reports and chooses formats most appropriate for given audiences. There are certain advantages of the responsive evaluation model, and this includes the approach explicitly recognizes the values and perspectives held by different audiences, and it provides a content in which to examine these different concerns. It is a flexible approach that uses content-rich information to portray a program in a way that is readily accessible to audiences. It enables the evaluator to acquire a rapid understanding of the program and to determine which issues and concerns are most important to a variety of stakeholders. The nature of the feedback provided in responsive evaluation provides the audiences with an opportunity to react to the evaluator's feedback and to interact with the evaluator about their issues and concerns. Also, certain disadvantages of the responsive evaluation model. With the high level of interaction between evaluator and stakeholders, the evaluator might become ambiguous in responsive evaluations, resulting in the evaluator serving as a resource person rather than a researcher. Since the model is so flexible, it may be difficult to maintain the focus of the evaluation, resulting in a failure to answer specific questions. The model needs large time commitment to the evaluation process and the need for highly skilled evaluators. It doesn't have firm commitment to consensus but to pluralism. An example of the responsive model. A case study evaluating an environmental science course. The purpose is to evaluate an environmental science course using stakes responsive evaluation model. Before we evaluate the case, we should look at the background of the assigned case first. For example, the course is designed to educate students about research and other strategies used to investigate community environmental issues. And we are going to think of the methods that we are going to use. In responsive model, there are also three models, which is the antecedents, transactions, and the outcomes. The antecedents includes the student's background and resource availability. In transactions, it includes component participation and behavioral interactions. And in outcomes, it includes improved performance, students' attitude, and intent to use. Next, this is now the results and summary of the evaluation. For example, students were familiar with basic concepts but not advanced techniques. Built-in for importance of ties between understood resource ability, class participation, and curricular choices. Lastly, we are now going to evaluate the quality of the case study using our observations. For example, the case study did not tackle a complex issue hard to judge the technique. Tools seemed well suited to case. In education, evaluation should be participant-oriented.